All right, guys, thank you so much. This is another episode of I'm a Black Woman, Yes, I Matter. Today is super, super important. It's about the empower and the importance of voting. I don't know if you guys don't know, but you should know that Election Day is November 3rd. It is this Tuesday. If you have not already voted, please, please make sure to go out and vote. Um, the panelists that we have today are I cannot even say enough words about them. They are powerful Black women. Every time I talk with them, I have so much energy. I'm ready to go out raring into the streets. I'm ready to have some action steps. So I just want to thank them again for being here. We've got Anissa Moore. We've got Shelly Henderson. I'm going to allow the ladies to go ahead and introduce themselves. Shelly, why don't you go first?
Sure. My name is Shelly Henderson. I live in Southern California. I am the president of the National Women's Leadership Council, which is an organization of women leaders. And what we are doing is we are building a bench. We recruit and train women so that they can run for office at all levels, from the local level all the way up to the national ticket. We do a lot of leadership training development. And then we have a policy side where we do research and advocate for women's issues, kind of a think tank. And I've been in that position for a while. Prior to that, I worked in Washington, D.C. for about 13 years in the United States Congress, at the Department of Education, and at the White House. And so now, as a consultant, I do a lot of political strategy and other things. So I'm excited for this conversation, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Anissa Moore. I currently serve as a professor of communications at Nassau Community College State University. I am actually a Brooklyn native, but I'm currently living in the city of Long Beach, which is located in Nassau County, New York. For many years, I've had the opportunity to serve with the North Park Civic Association within my area. And our goal is to educate people about the ballot, to increase voter literacy, and also to move forward with raising candidates, very similar to my colleague. For 4 years, I had the opportunity to serve as the Long Beach City Councilwoman for my area of the city of Long Beach. And I was the first African-American to actually have representation since the city started in 1922. So I'm really pleased that we were able to make history for those 4 years. And I look forward to this conversation. I am so happy to reconnect with my sister Kumara, and so happy now to have a new friend in Shelly. So this is going to be a fascinating conversation, sisters.
Yeah, it absolutely will. I mean, you and I and Shelly have had some great and impassioned conversations. Literally just 15 minutes before we went live, we were going in depth, and I already knew, like, man, we're gonna send some gems out into the world, and hopefully people embrace them and then take some action, right? So we have a lot that we want to go ahead and cover. So why don't we just go ahead and get started? So first and foremost, why is it important that we vote?
Oh, wow.
Right.
Oh, well, look, I've said this, I'm going to say it again. It is so important that we vote, because right now we're battling for the soul of America, for the existence of the United States of America. That's how crucial and critical this vote is. And our show is about us being Black women. This is about us fighting for our children, for our grandchildren, for our communities, for the legacy of our people, for our existence. That's how critical this vote is.
I agree with my sister. And here's the thing. We say your vote is your voice, and it's become a bit of a cliche, but it really is your voice. And, you know, I know, like you, I am so over people who will not get up and vote, or who won't lick the envelope and the stamp, but they are the first ones complaining. And so I think people don't understand the voter rolls are important for many reasons that don't even have anything to do with voting. For example, and as a person with a law degree, I will tell you this: the jury pools are selected by the voter rolls. And so when I have a 25-year-old son, so who went to Morehouse College. So he's got all his friends are young Black men. Well, if something were to happen and one of them had to go to trial, and there are 12 jurors that don't look like me and don't look like my son, they're pulling from the voter rolls. That's how they get the jury pool. So when we also complain about things like juries being biased, racially insensitive, we have to understand that we've got to vote for reasons that go beyond voting. But I'll tell you, for me, voter data, first of all, people should know voter data is acquirable. So we won't know who you voted for. You can purchase the voter data. We may not know who you voted for, but we will know whether or not a person voted, right? And I said, even thinking about my legacy, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, I want it recorded. I want it down for my legacy and posterity that I was a woman that took action. I was a woman that made the decision. I'm not going to sit on the sidelines. I'm going to go out and vote. And I think we need to start thinking even in terms of legacy about voting. Our ancestors were up against way more than we were, and many of them lost their lives fighting for the right to vote, walking 100 miles so that they could vote. How dare we be so lazy, so apathetic as to say, my vote doesn't matter. Your vote matters because you matter.
Oh my God, Shelley, what powerful words. In fact, it really goes to what I was just saying. I literally made a post today saying the right for every U.S. citizen to vote just was passed in the 1960s. We know people who are older than that amendment. So for us in just 2 generations to have this apathy, right, to be discouraged, to feel disempowered, to feel disenfranchised. And Shelley, you really said a lot of things to, I hope, get people off the couch.
Yes.
Go ahead and vote. Anissa, I know you can pour some words too. Please let me know, how do we help our people who feel disencouraged, who feel like their vote really doesn't matter?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add something else, and that is we talked about the jury selection, but also we cannot remain silent as it relates to the health inequities, the disparities. Again, this is what you're voting for. You're voting for healthcare. You're voting for education. You're voting for how much funding will come into your community as it relates to educating your children in the schools. You're voting for infrastructure. Why is your street all cracked up, right? Why are your streets messed up? Right. It's from the local all the way to the national level. That's why your vote counts so very, very much. You have a voice, right? Because whether you use your voice or not, if you choose not to vote, that still counts as a vote, right?
That's right.
You're abstaining, so you're saying it doesn't matter to me. And if you're saying it doesn't matter to me, then you're allowing other people to make decisions for you, right? So that's another reason why we're saying today, as Black women, yes, we matter. Our vote and our voice matters. And so we're going to take that vote and we're going to be loud. We're going to amplify our voices to let people know you're not paying attention to us, but we've been watching. We've been paying attention. And now here's what we think about how the direction of our nation should go forth. And John Lewis, when he said, your vote is the most powerful nonviolent tool that you have. So we cannot forget those words, right? That's how you do it. Sometimes people want to rally, and that's fine. But in the end, when you cast that vote, that's going to resound for years to come.
And if I might just say one quick thing, what she said just reminded me, having, as a person who has worked on campaigns and has run for office and works for, again, that data is available and politicians look at that data. Even when they're running for office, we pull that information and we can break down by zip code who voted and who didn't. And when you have a block of of folks, a zip code, a region that are not voting, then politicians make the calculation. I don't have to pay attention to them. You know why? Because they don't even care. Because voting is the floor, not the ceiling. That's the least we're able to do to express our voice. And so again, for all the reasons that we've talked about, but also people need to keep in mind that voter data is used for many things. When there are projects, development, appropriating funding. If you have, why would a politician, if you can think like a politician for a moment, why would they appropriate funding or do anything significant for people that don't even have, in their eyes, the basic level of caring about their community, caring about what happens there? They think, if they don't care, why should I care? And so we know that people care. That's why it's important that we encourage them to get out there, take it. At this point, it's too late to mail it. Go to early voting. I have on my Delta stuff because I'm going in person to vote, even though I'm in California, and all of us, we got a mail-in ballot. But and I'm a permanent vote by mail person, but this time is just so important. I want to walk myself into that poll and vote. And I'm just encouraging everyone, but particularly Black women, let's get out there, ladies, and let's go vote.
And you just reminded me of something. Growing up, although I lived in Brooklyn, I remember my grandmother, and my great grandmother. They were so proud to vote. They would get dressed in their church clothes to walk a few blocks down, but to cast that vote. Them coming from the South, coming from South Carolina, this was important for them, and they walked with pride to cast that vote. And we owe that. We owe that to our ancestors to do the same. So ladies, get dressed, put on your Delta, put on whatever your AKA put on, right? Represent, right? Represent and go out and make your voices heard. And we know, again, studies show that Black women are always engaged in voting.
Yeah.
Right? We're solid. They can count on us to vote. But now we have the opportunity to shift some things in our local communities and as well as on the national level. And so we have to get out there. And I just wanted to also just once again, just agree with my sister Shelly. Again, as a former elected official, it's true. We do have the information. Where the votes are coming from. And you will hear all elected officials say, I'm the voice for my constituents.
That's right.
Right. So if you remain silent, then they're not representing you when they speak.
That's right.
We're putting people in power who are not speaking for us. So now here's our opportunity to do that on a local level, all the way up to a national level. We have the opportunity right now to shape what our Senate is going to look like, what the Congress is going to look like. Some of you this year are voting for your local judges. All of that matters. All right. So this is our time. And obviously, ultimately, the president of the United States, our vice president, right? We're excited about that vice presidential race. This is the time for us to speak out. So let's get out there. Let's do it. No excuses. No more complaining. Let's move forward. Let's empower our communities.
I love what both of you guys are saying, right? By not voting, we are being silent, and silence is speaking volumes, and silence is allowing others to speak for us. So just off of that, if you want people out here speaking for you, and I don't think any of us do, right? None of us do.
That's
so you guys have to go out. You'll have to go out and vote. We do have a question from an audience member. So this is from Genghis. To what extent is voter apathy among folks of color tied to the lack of cultural purity in politics? That sounds like a spicy question. Love it.
Well, I can say this. I can say that as an elected official, one of the first things I learned about this issue was when you're ready to move forward with trying to get your petition together and have people sign, you start knocking on doors and people are like, well, why should I sign your petition? Because I keep signing these petitions every year when somebody needs me, and then I don't see you again, right? I don't see you anymore. You're just asking me to sign a petition and my community is not changing, right? And that's one of the major reasons why people are apathetic. Like, how is this vote going to in some way improve my quality of life? Well, I think this is what it's up to us to hold our elected officials accountable. In other words, voting is the first step. The problem that we have had in our community is we go, yep, I voted. Okay, good. Check that off. And then we don't hold them accountable for 2 years or 4 years, whatever their term limit is. So then we don't engage. We don't attend town hall meetings. We don't attend the city council meeting. We don't call their office when our street needs to get fixed or when something's wrong with our water situation. We need to make those calls. We need to email them like everybody else does. We need to hold them accountable. And so what I did was, after I won, so I won, and then January you go in. But as soon as the weather got warm, guess what? I started knocking on doors again. And people said, didn't you win? We thought you won. And I said, yeah, but I'm coming to talk to you. I'm coming to find out, what do I need to do? Wow. I said, because I don't want to be that person that in 4 years I come knocking on your door again, asking you for help. I'm supposed to be helping you along the way. So what has happened is we've lost the pulse of the people. It's up to the elected officials to stay connected to the people that got them elected. All right. And I believe, again, the people have to begin to hold their elected officials accountable. And we also have to begin to choose those people that we feel will help us and will empower us. And that's not, and he talks about, whoever talked about the cultural purity part, just because someone looks like us doesn't mean that that person has our agenda. Right. So that means we need to do some research. We need to ask them about their platform, right? We need to test it, right? To see if this is the right person that's going to move forward to help our communities.
And I agree with all of that. And a couple of things I'll add that may give even a different perspective. You know, and remember, I've worked for 3 national level politicians. And I'll tell you, a lot of politics is compromise. So if we are looking for someone, if we have a purity test that you have to have 100% you can't even find a boyfriend or girlfriend that has 100% of what you want or what you're looking for. We often talk about an 80-20 rule. And so what I would say is, you know, your vote, it's not a Valentine. You don't have to be in love with the person. But I think what must be true is that those issues that are core, that are fundamental to you, you know, and for example, for me, I could never vote for someone who does not believe in systemic racism, because that is a core belief. That is a fundamental belief. And if you don't agree with that, then I doubt how you could handle my humanity. So for me, that's fundamental. So I would say we need to look at core beliefs, fundamental beliefs. What is most important? And I would say if we can get 75 to 80, that's great. We can argue about the 20, right? As we get into it and as that person, you know, has a platform and has some political power and some influence. But I think if we're looking for 100%, and I don't want to jump the gun, but we talk, you know, the ladies know I happen to be a registered Democrat, but I've only been a registered Democrat for about 1.5 years. And we could talk about that later, but I'm a proud Democrat because, you know, do I agree with everything? No, but sometimes I want to have chicken for dinner at 7, and by 7:30 I want a taco. So, you know, I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time. But if those fundamentals are in place, I think that's one way to combat voter apathy. And the other thing is, again, everything, because I think someone said, they don't feel like. Feelings are fickle. Just because you don't feel something is true doesn't mean it's not true, right? And so I think we all have to get beyond what we feel like. I'm still going to go vote, even though it's raining today, and I'd rather get in the bed and watch the Hallmark Channel Christmas movies all day. But I have to go and vote no matter how I feel. And that accountability piece is, and I want to commend you. I've never heard of that before. I've never heard of someone being elected to office and doing field work, knocking on doors while they are an elected official. So I commend you. That is, I've never heard of it, but I know that it's rare. That's amazing, because usually once people are in office, but remember, squeaky wheels get grease. So the folks like me, who's at every single, as long as I'm able, who's at every city council meeting. If I don't like something, I'm sending emails. If something happens, I'm going down to City Hall. Squeaky wheels get grease. So again, we can't sit around complaining, talking, well, they're not 100% of what I want. Look, you could change that 80 to 90 if you get activated and start really holding them accountable.
I think some of the things that you guys said are so important, right? Which is voting is just the floor. Then there's actually some steps afterwards, which is educating yourself around the issues that are affecting your community, being active, holding your politicians accountable. But something that you both talked about in your intro, which is really where I want to go next, because to your point, Anissa, Black women, we're out there. We go out, we vote. We really have harnessed that power. We try to get our families involved. We try to really talk about the issues. Yeah. But one of the things that we've realized is there's a dearth of Black women in politics as politicians leading in their community. And both you and Shelley both talked about how you are working to try to change that, to have more Black women, more women in those positions of power. And I would love for you guys to talk a little bit more about that.
Right now, I am on the board of the National Women's Political Caucus. If you are familiar at all, and I know you are with Shirley Chisholm, she's a founding member of that organization. And I'm actually the chair of diversity and membership. And so in that capacity, I am actively out looking for women in the community, and women at a national level, which is where my organization, National Women's Leadership Council, comes in, because we need to have a bench of women ready, really, really ready to serve in these leadership roles in politics. And it is most women, especially, if you run a household, let alone, you have a career, they're more ready than they usually think they are. People think I'm a politics lover. So I went to, undergraduate as a political science major and have done all those things. But you don't have to do that. You don't even have to have a college degree for that matter. And so I like to let women know, listen, we train them. There's a few things people need to understand about messaging and raising money and field work, like Anissa talked about. But most women are more ready to run and serve than they think they are, because they're already doing it. They're running households. They're supervisors at work. They're in leadership at church. These soft skills are transferable, right? And women, and you all probably know this, the data tells us that a woman has to be asked 7 times before she says yes to run for office. But that is white women. The data shows us that Black women generally have to be asked between 11 and 12 times. And most of that is because they don't believe in themselves. They don't see themselves as being those qualified women who can make decisions on behalf of this country, of their community. But the fact is, they're already doing it, and they're raising people who are doing it. So I'm excited to be engaged in that work. I love helping women just, prepare themselves to really get out there and make a difference in our communities.
And I commend you, Shelley, for that work. For me, and I just want to speak to the audience, I was not involved in politics, although I researched it from a communications perspective, looking at different campaigns. I'm looking at people across the nation who were influential. However, I was one of those people. I said, I don't want anything to do with it. I called politics politics. I don't trust the system. I'm one of those. So I called it politics. But when I felt the need within the community, and we talked as a community, and that's the one thing. First, we have to come together as communities to say, what do we need and how are we going to put all of our differences aside for the greater good?
Yeah,
that's something that we have to do as a people. Then we realized we need representation. There's no one from our community that's representing us. Let's all come together, whether we're Black, Republicans, Green Party, environmentalists, people who don't. Let's all come together as a community and let's run some candidates. And so that's how I kind of jumped into something, because the community was behind me. See, and you have to respect the community. Talk to people first. Don't just say you speak for the community. Let the community say you speak for us, right? And so we did that and we ran. And I think that's so very important. And also, it was all grassroots. We didn't have money. 2 churches made some chicken and fish dinners. I took that money and I bought some little signs. The rest of it was walking and talking, social media. So sometimes as Black women, we feel, well, I don't have the money for this race. I don't have the resources. Use what you have. Use your resources. Use your people resources. Your people resources are the greatest resources that you have. And the one thing that happened as a result, and that's what we learned, because we didn't have to go and ask people to help us run, we didn't owe anybody anything. And that's one of the problems. You start taking money here, there, and everywhere. Now these people start saying, I need you to vote this way, or do this, or do that. And I was able to use the principles of one of my other sheroes, which is Shirley Chisholm. Look, unbought and unbossed. This way it's clean. I don't have to deal with other people. I can just focus in on the people. In terms of training during that period of time, because I do have a communications background, I will encourage people, male or female, whoever is on this call, regardless of your gender, to go ahead and start small and build. We need voices on our local school boards. It's still a viable way to get started. And if you attend school board meetings, you know that it's all about politics. All right. Start with your school board, right? If they're not doing what needs to happen and your children, you don't feel that your children are getting what they deserve, you need to stand up. Rise up now. This is a call for you. Start with your school board. All right. Then move on to your village or your town trustee board, or then try to consider running for city council. But start small and continue to build, and then build your base as you go along. In terms of my experience during that period of time, I've had the opportunity to work with, mentor 2 younger African-American men in my community to run for city council and another for the school board. I've also mentored 2 Latina women to run for the library board within my particular area, and that's just my area. And then because of the grassroots, people start calling me in different towns and villages. And so I'm proud to say that, I've helped an African-American judge, first Caribbean woman, to become a local judge in Nassau County. 2 judges actually in Nassau County. I trained some people for school board. They're winning. They're all winning, and now they're serving. So it means that once we have this leadership, that we have a responsibility. Each one teach one, reach someone else. And I continue to teach and train so that people can move forward and impact their communities. That's our role. That's the role that we have. If we represent this great, cloud of women who have stood for us, then we have to do the same. And that's for anyone within our community. If you're in a position, you're supposed to bring other people with you. Let's not forget that African concept of we, not I, but we.
I agree. And I just wanted to add as well that those women or men who are listening, if you have any interest and you think one day you, like you said, you may want to do something, just to piggyback off of what you said, get started now. You can do little, you could volunteer for someone's campaign. That's the way you learn. And that'll sort of, and then once they're in office, you may be able to volunteer and help them do what they do so you can learn more about your community. Like you said, library board is actually a powerful board that people miss. Another board that is very powerful is water board. Water board is a utility. And I know here, I live in Orange County, California. They have, and I live on the coast, right? So they have many, something like $50 million budget. It's huge. Water is huge, right? It's a utility. And so people miss that. But again, these are opportunities to learn more about the community. So I always encourage folks who feel that interest, go volunteer and look into what's right around you, because you learn as you go. Right. And you, like you said, you're building sort of your base, you're building your folks that will work with you and help you. So, yeah, I'm excited. Regardless of the outcome of this election, I'm excited about what I'm seeing in our democracy. Like I don't know if we said this on camera or off, because we had a great conversation before, but I'm excited about what I'm seeing, because I feel like that apathy is finally starting to creep out. I voted for Barack Obama. I love Barack Obama, but in some ways I felt like, especially that second term, we got a little lulled to sleep. We were, just so happy and excited, and this is great. And it was normalized, right? We thought this is normal to have a Black president. It's normal to have an educated, gorgeous first lady. This is life, and then, several million of us said, we're not even going to bother. In 2016, and I tell you, it has been quite a 4 years. so I'm saying that's not, I feel like apathy, like I said, we'll know for sure the election day totals, but I'm so excited and so encouraged that people are starting to wake up and realize if someone is working that hard to take your vote away, how powerful it must be.
Right. And us living, the reality is for us, at least for me as a Black woman, the reality was at work and every place else, people were saying, why are you upset? Like, why are you complaining? You have a Black president. See, because that's the messaging, right? That we focus in on just the president. And I'm just trying to encourage everybody today that it's not just you going in there just to vote for the president. Right. Do the research, look at everything else that's on that ballot, right? Because those are the things that are going to directly impact your life, right?
Way more than the presidency.
Way more than the presidency. And we get people caught up in every 4 years just come out and vote for the president. We need everything else, because that's exactly what happened, unfortunately.
It did.
President Barack Obama. We focused in that year. We was out there, right? Buses, bands, just deep, right? Rolling deep. And then all of a sudden the next year, for all of these other positions, right? Congress and Senate and everything else, whatever.
We lost.
We lost. Right? We lost the judges. We lost the Senate seats. We lost the Congress.
Yeah.
So let's get in there this year, and let's make sure that we look at those votes, because those decisions count even more. All right.
district
Guys,
attorney, judge,
Yes.
city council,
all of it.
school
All of it.
board. So,
Right.
This
That
is
DA,
just
that
one
district
step. You guys
attorney.
have to keep going out there. You have to keep voting. One of the things that we did talk about offline that I definitely wanted to bring to the conversation online is the fact that for a history of time of your political careers, you both were part of the Republican Party or ran on the Republican ticket. Let's talk about that. Why sometimes we find ourselves in that sort of position. So, Shelley, you brought it up first since you were saying, a year and a half ago, you are now a registered Democrat. So, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that transition from working in the Republican Party and then deciding to put a stamp on it and know in history you're going down as a Democrat.
Sure. And it's a long sordid tale, but I will say this. When I was in through a wonderful series of circumstances, I found myself dropping out of Brown University, getting married, having a kid, getting divorced, and found myself at a community college. Okay, so from Brown University to a community college. With a kid, and my son, I think, a 1-year-old, what have you. And I was very broken. I became a Christian, maybe that's TMI, but I became a Christian and got very, very heavily involved in Campus Crusade for Christ. I started a club that's still in existence, and that was many years ago. It's Basic Brothers and Sisters in Christ. And through the Campus Crusade for Christ, I ended up, partially through them, I was able to secure an internship in Washington, D.C. with Congressman J.C. Watts. Congressman J.C. Watts, for those who don't know, and this was 1998, I believe, was the only Black Republican in Congress. For a time, he was chair of the House Republican Conference, in addition to being the representative from Oklahoma, former football player turned pastor, and which is how I connected with him on the pastoral part. And so he gave me an internship. 3 weeks into that internship, he hired me. So I transferred to Georgetown from my community college, and got my baby and moved to Washington, D.C. And I ended up completing at Georgetown my undergraduate work. But at that time, I was 25 or 26. I didn't come from a family that was very politically active, just more church than anything. And so the faith, our faith tradition was very conservative. We didn't wear pants and, just a very conservative faith tradition. And it was sort of unspoken that based on some of the tenets of our faith, that we voted Republican. I mean, that's just sort of what it was, right? I didn't give a whole lot of thought to that. I really admired JC and the work that he did. At any rate, I don't know if you know how Washington works or you've worked there, but it's very difficult, having worked for a Republican, to then say, oh, now I guess I'll work for John Conyers. Like, it doesn't go like that. You're sort of on a track at that level, because when you're working in a leadership office like I did, then you just go to the next thing. And so when George W. Bush was running, in our off hours, we donated our time to the RNC and getting George Bush elected. And so when he won, I became an appointee to the Department of Education, and then a couple of years later moved over to the White House, and I was in charge of African American affairs. I like to make people laugh and let them know the job that Omarosa had, I had, but when I had it, I didn't make nearly the money that she made. But so you sort of get on a track. Now, let me say this. And so I was a woman of faith. During that time, I became an ordained pastor. I mean, all kinds of things, and you're just on a track. I'm not going to lie and say that during those years, because I worked for the Republican Party at the highest level. I worked in the White House. My boss was Karl Rove. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you or tell the viewers that that there was not an undercurrent of racism, right? So was George Bush racist? Never, not that I could tell, right? And I worked in what's called EOP, the Executive Office of the President, not that I ever sensed. Was Karl Rover racist? Not that I ever sensed. In fact, he was, believe it or not, one of the best bosses I ever had. But there was just an undercurrent, just sort of that you could sense with other people, comments made. So you just kind of knew that it was there, right? So, and I don't even know if we talked about this in 2016. I was hired as a consultant for the Republican National Committee. So I moved to Cleveland for a significant amount of time and worked on the operations team in 2016. So when Donald Trump was at the Q accepting his nomination, of course I was actually at Progressive Field and gave my credentials to interns because I didn't want to see him accept it. But as soon as probably 5 years ago, I became what's called in California NPP, which is no party preference. So I was just sort of no party preference for many years. But last year, after we were all, I'm sure, disgusted with what we saw that has been going on. But I was particularly enraged. And I'm going to tell you why, because when I was there on the Hill at the White House, I believed in the work that I was doing. I believed in it. A lot of the evangelicals that everyone talks about, those evangelicals were people that I entertained, people that I spent a significant amount of time with. And what I came to realize is that it was never about God. It really wasn't about the faith. And I know it wasn't about the faith because you could not make some of the decisions. You could not support someone like the gentleman in office right now if you had true faith. That's my, I'm speaking for myself and not any organization. And I was just so enraged, and I have been. I'm controlling my anger. But last year, I was so frustrated. I felt like I needed to do something. I needed to make an express statement. And I felt like because everyone knew that I had been a Republican, it was public. And so I felt like I needed to make an express statement that I am not a no party preference, which is kind of like I'll date you, but not marry you. That's the way I saw it. Sort of, I'm in the middle. I said, I don't want it known 20 years from now, 100 years from now, 300 years from now. I want it known that I made a decision in this moment that I was the antithesis of what was happening in the Republican Party. And I said it earlier. Do I agree with 100%? No. But the fundamentals, the cores, absolutely, I'm in agreement with. So I felt like it was a time for choosing for me. That this was not, no party preference. This was, I am 100% against everything that party stands for. And frankly, I don't know how much longer that party will be in existence.
I think it's important for people to understand that the Republican Party of the 80s and the 90s is not the party that we see today.
Right.
I think I can only say from New York and from Nassau County that African Americans were always asked to change their party based on whatever party was in office at the time, right? And that determined the appointments, that determined the jobs, that determined all of those things. I can say that the Republican Party here did focus in on supporting Black businesses, supporting people of faith, supporting all of those initiatives. So I think one of the things that we've done as Americans is that we really focused on that's Republican or that's Democratic. And I think we have to look at the individual policies. We have to look at the policies one by one specifically, do research on it, and not vote based on Republican or Democrat, but based on the policies and the platform for each individual and what they represent. I think as Black people, we also have to begin to entertain the concept, especially on a local level, of looking at the Green Party, looking at forming our own parties to get people elected. I was in a different situation where during the 90s, a lot of African Americans, specifically middle class and upper middle class people, as well as Christians, tended to go with the Republican vote on many levels because of morality, issues of faith and values. So it was really about values. And there were a lot of things that were happening at that particular time, removing, prayer from schools and all these things. And that really rallied people to say, wait, what's happening here? So I think that's one of the things. And then I gradually shifted to go back to the Democratic Party, because that was a party that, my grandparents and my parents were voting for. So you kind of started doing that. And we have to understand that people, and this is about educating people about the ballot, about these issues. When you're young, people start knocking on doors and they start telling you what, vote row A all the way, right? So what happened was people just started, I don't know what's on the ballot. I'm not familiar with the ballot. They told me, I got this thing in my head, row A. And then you just start going across without really looking at it, without researching the ballot, without researching what these people represent. So I think we're in a different time now, knowing what we know. That means that we need to look at the ballot, do research. Even now, for those of you who have not, you're undecided. If you have social media or you have the internet, you have Google, go ahead and look up and research what each person represents, right? What we're doing here in the city of Long Beach in terms of our community, and we represent Black, Latino, the Caribbean community here. What we do is we give them a copy of the ballot. We show them what the different positions are, but then we explain to them what each position means. Some people don't even understand, well, Senate, a judge, what is this? Right. So we teach them what it means. And then we bring the people who represent these little dots to the community. They have to come to the community. We do not give our vote away anymore. For the past 4 years, that was one good thing that I could say that will happen and will continue to happen now that I'm no longer in office. You have to come and you have to tell us what you stand for. And we ask you questions. And then when they leave, then as a community, we go, okay, what do we think? Well, if you want to vote this way, this is what we feel, but we can't force everybody to vote the same way. But we're going to show you how to bubble it in so that you can practice before you get there. Why? Because most people have never read the ballot. They go in blindly and they just start bubbling and they just get it over with. We want people to think critically about the positions. And so for this year, we did this virtually because we couldn't bring everybody together, but we brought all the candidates together on a virtual panel. This weekend we'll be at all of the churches for those people who have not engaged in early voting or those people who did not do the absentee. We're going to show them again how to bullet everybody in, how to do it properly. But this year we're not going across the board. We've got some people in row A, we got some people in row B. We even have someone who's green this year because they represent what we need on a local level. So let's not get caught up in just what's happening on the presidential level, but on the local level, as communities, if someone meets everything that Shelley has pointed out, then we need to do that. We can't continue to stay and stick in a box because there are some critical things that our communities need right now. And those people who are willing to work with us and we need to work with those people. For me personally, I was a registered Democrat. But I did have the opportunity. I ran on the Democratic line the first time because, as you can see, I'm grassroots and I'm really out there and I'm not a part of the status quo. At that particular time, my local Democratic Party did not feel comfortable supporting me as an incumbent. They supported the other incumbents. They did not support me. So I was in a situation where I need to get on the ballot. because some of my friends, they did write-in campaigns, and even though it was successful, it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough votes for them to secure an election. And so I interviewed for several different parties, and I went with the party that was willing to support me. And so on a local level, the local Republican Party here in Nassau County, they supported me. And so I moved forward with that. And they let us know, and they support many people of color. We have a very diverse group of candidates every year, and they said they're not, it's not about the national agenda. They're really focusing in on what they can do to help our county. And so that's why we were able to do that in terms of running on another ticket. But there are serious issues as it relates to this, and I'm hoping that we will, as a people now, regardless of the outcome, we will begin to plan for the next 4 years so that we're ready for another candidate, so that we're ready for candidates on all levels. Once this vote is over, once November 3rd is over, that's our time to plan. Let's get other people engaged so that we can take the seats that we need to take and to change our communities.
I love that. I also am going to pause for a quick public service announcement, because it occurs to me that if you haven't voted, this might sound a little strange. Like, what are they talking about when they're saying the ballot and it's not just a national election? So literally on your ballot is not just who you're voting for, president and vice president, but also you'll have your local elections that are going on. So whether that's council, whether that's school board, and then on the back side will be any amendments that are up for discussion within your state council or your town council. So the ballot and voting on November 3rd is not just a presidential election. It is anything that is up during the time that affects your community. So I just wanted to say that, because it could be that you haven't voted yet, and so you didn't know exactly what Shelly and Anissa were talking about there.
No,
okay.
That's great.
So we have a few minutes left. One of the things that I do want to talk about are there are so many myths about who can vote. And people have no idea, like, do I have the right to vote? Where can I vote? How do I know if I'm registered to vote? If I got a traffic ticket, can I vote? If I was convicted of a misdemeanor, can I vote? If I have a felony on my record, can I vote? And there's just so much, I think, purposeful disinformation to disenfranchise us. So would love for you all to take some of these myths and lies and tell us the truth.
Well, it's interesting. Right here in California, we have, in addition to everything that's on our ballot, we also have 14 propositions. And one of those propositions, which is Prop 17, I believe, is a proposition that would allow individuals who have completed their prison sentences, and they are convicted felons, but once they have completed their prison sentence, they be allowed to vote, even though they are still on parole, right? So they get out after 10 years, and they have to have probation for maybe 5 years, 3 years. The proposition that we have here now is saying, hey, they've paid their debt to society, let them vote. And a little known fact, also, they would have the ability to run for office. And there is, you would believe it or not, there is tremendous opposition against that proposition. They put a lot of money behind it. And it seems to me they are the rationale behind that is, well, they haven't fully paid their debt to society. So until they have, fully paid their debt to society, paid off all fines and fees, and, they should not be allowed to vote. But the data tells us, and I'm speaking from the legal profession right now, the data tells us that when an individual is allowed to vote, because that right has been taken away once they were incarcerated. But when they're allowed to come home and fully engage as a citizen in society, including the right to vote, that they are much less likely to commit another crime. The recidivism, that is the rate that they would go back into prison, that cycle seems to be much, much less when folks can when their right to vote is restored. So it's just interesting. We have that on the ballot right now. And those against it seem to want to continue to punish individuals that have committed a crime, but have completed their debt to society. At any rate, it varies state by state is what the answer is. So in some states, like the state of Virginia, I believe, convicted felons, once they're out, they can vote. There is right now, I believe there's some issues going on in Florida where folks who have committed felonies and they're out could vote, but they have to pay all fines and fees, which still has almost 1 million individuals not being able to vote. I'm going to just be honest. These, in my opinion, this is nothing more than another form of voter suppression.
Yep.
At the end of the day, if a person has, while you're in prison, obviously you're not able to vote. Although there are some folks that feel like you should be, because though you've committed a crime, you're still a citizen of the United States. But it does vary from state to state. But anyone, if you've committed a misdemeanor, you can vote for sure. But of course, we have all these crazy, weird registration rules from state to state. Of course, but here in California, you could register and vote on the same day. And I know that's the case somewhere. So what I would say to folks, if you don't know whether or not you can vote, just go and try. Right at this point, because we're so close. For sure, if you're in California, you can register same day and vote right there. But yeah, if you just because you have committed a crime, just because you may have done something you're not proud of, doesn't mean you don't have the right to engage in the voting process. You are still a member of the community, and so I encourage everyone, register and vote.
Yeah, and I'll just add in terms of what people might find, because I think it's important to remind you, in many states, wherever you are, you're going to anticipate long lines for voting. Just be prepared to wait. Make sure that you bring some water, some snacks. Make sure you have, in some certain states, depending on where you are, that you're wearing your mask. But also want to remind people that if you decide to wear any kind of political regalia on that line, they have the right to ask you to leave. So let's not even find ourselves in a situation where we're already being pushed away or sent away. If you decide that you want to have a selfie of yourself on the line as you wait, take that selfie, but they will come up to you and ask you to move or to leave if you're taking selfies inside your voting booth or your privacy area. All right. So these are things that we need to be aware of. Also, if let's say you've completed your ballot and there are problems with your ballot, it's not going through, they will give you at least 3 opportunities to correct it so that it will go through the machine. If there are problems, and I just want to remind people, once it goes through, please stand there and wait until you see that your ballot is counted. Sometimes we finish voting, it goes through the machine, and we walk away. I'm begging you, in light of everything that's going on this year, stand there for one more second to make sure you see that your vote is counted. If for whatever reason you get there and they're asking you, whether it be through the tablet or even on paper, they may challenge you and they'll say, oh, but wait, I see your name here, but your signature is different, right? You have the right to say, well, I signed this when I was 19, maybe now I'm 75. Of course, my signature is different, right? You have the right to go ahead and still receive a ballot to cast your vote. If your name is not on the list and you are a registered voter, it's still your right. You have the right to fill out an affidavit saying, this is me, I'm voting today. And once you cast that vote again, you need to see and make sure that that vote is counted. Do not walk away. Do not allow anyone to hold on to your affidavit without your receipt, without proof that you moved forward with voting. And depending on the state, you should have received some kind of voting card telling you exactly what your polling place is. Do not wait until Tuesday at 8:55 to realize, wait, it's almost 9 o'clock. Where do I vote? Right? Because this is what happens. You go to the wrong polling place. They send you someplace else. Right? Let's do all of the background work. Let's do the research now. Go on to, I think somebody even put it in the chat. Go on to Ballotpedia. Go to your local vote.org. They will tell you your actual polling place. You can call up your local board of elections on Monday morning to make sure and to confirm your polling place. You want to be at the right place so that you can cast that vote.
All right, guys, we are at 1 minute after 1 o'clock.
Oh
Before
my
we
God.
go, though, I know this conversation went so fast, and like I feel like we just scratched the surface. That's how I always feel. We can just keep going and keep talking, but I always think it's important. I know it might seem a little cliche, but you guys are out here. You're doing the work. How do you take care of yourself? How are you making sure that you're also taking care of you? Because you guys give so much to the community.
Oh, wow. Well, I actually place time on my phone because everything is on my phone. So I just place time for myself on my phone, and that's my time. And I just cut everything else off. And if it's time to do the bubble bath, if it's time for me to just watch a mystery, that's my time. But I try to do that once a month. And then the regular self-care time is usually Saturday afternoon. That becomes my time. Sunday after church service, the rest of the day, that's my time just to rest, because it's serious work. It's serious work because I'm an educator during the day, but I'm also a community activist for the rest of the day, which means when I'm not teaching, my phone is just completely blowing up because people have needs, people have questions. We're everywhere this weekend. We're trying to walk for other people. We're sending out messages to local Black women in our area to remind people to vote for them. But then we're also trying to get the vote out. So we're going to be everywhere this weekend, bringing sample ballots, showing people and teaching them how to vote. And then on election day, we'll be across everywhere trying to coordinate if people need rides. There's so many things that have to happen in terms of this vote, but we do this for all of our elections. And I want to encourage everyone who's watching this today, get involved. If you don't want to be the leader right now, you can volunteer in your community. You can drive someone to the polls, someone that you know, even just drive your family right now, right? Just get people there. And so that's the work that we're engaged in. But self-care is critical. One, because sometimes as Black women, we're helping everybody else and we forget to pause to do that work for ourselves. So I have made it a part of my everyday schedule. Pause, have some time of silence. I meditate, I journal, sometimes just turning everything off, all devices off, and just engaging in silence. But you have to have some time. It's COVID, so over here we have a lot of people. We have an uptake in terms of all of the cases, but still walking. And because I'm near the beach, walk along the boardwalk, getting that air. But you have to kind of decompress from it all, because especially right now, because there's a lot of anxiety about the outcome for this presidential race. And I'm one of those people. Wait, do I have to go to Canada? Like, what's going to happen here? But in the midst of it all, I do believe that self-care is critical for us, and that we cannot allow the media and social media to deter us from casting that vote, and from also taking care of our minds, our bodies, as well as our spirits.
And I agree. And I have learned to prioritize myself. I believe that you cannot pour from an empty vessel. And, we're on this call. So we know we're community leaders, activists, all of that. So, and you have your own personal career and goals and children and husbands, and you have that. So if we're going to be people who can continue this work, because this is not for the faint of heart, as you all know, we are all pulled in so many directions. And so I have had to learn to prioritize myself. So for me, it is, the baths and the scented candles and quiet. I'm fortunate in the sense that I live alone, so I don't have to contend with other people when I don't want to. So, however, in this age, but particularly in this season of, it's not, I could be on 5 or 6 Zoom calls a day and I'm just totally overwhelmed at the end of the day, and the phone pops constantly. So I literally leave my phone in the kitchen, usually starting, except for certain things, I leave it in the kitchen. I leave it in a different part of the house so that otherwise I will not be able to rest. And I'm like, Anissa, for me, it's football. So
me too.
With Zoom, I go to night service because I am going to watch my football. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I'm a Steelers fan.
Oh, Steelers! All right, I love you, coach.
Yeah, and I give myself that time to come. It has nothing to do with politics or anything, and that's my way of just being able to decompress. Sometimes I have on 4 TVs in my house. I can hear CNN, MSNBC, Fox. What's going on? The phone, and I have to Sundays. I want to know about the Buffalo Bills, all that kind of. So you have to, I would just say to the women and men, of course, but we tend to have a superwoman complex sometimes. And so I would say you must prioritize yourself. Just remember, you cannot pour from an empty vessel. If you continue to pour from your vessel and you don't fill yourself up, eventually you will have nothing to give. And so you can't help anybody and you're depleted now. And that's when all kind of health issues come in. We get sad. We're more apt to be depressed, to feel, lonely, all those things. So we've got to remember in this work, this is warrior work. We must pour into ourselves. And again, I'm a woman of faith, so I become refreshed in prayer. I'm refreshed in quiet meditation, solitude. I have vision boards in my house, and so sometimes I just pull out my magazines. This morning I had my Oprah magazine and I was just saying, oh, I like that. And I tear it out and post it on my vision board. Just some things to keep me, focused. Otherwise, some things that I enjoy and that I am looking forward to so that I can continue to get in the trenches and do this work.
Man, so much knowledge was dropped. So many things that I think hey, make sure you have a plan to vote. Think about ways that you can volunteer into the community. Voting is just the floor. Yes. Once you vote, hold people accountable, become involved, understand the issues, maybe even run for political office yourself, right? Start thinking about the different boards that you could join. Do it all. Yes. I mean, we got this in just 1 hour. I already know what I need to do when I log on. This is indeed warrior work. You guys are warriors. Thank you so much, Anissa and Shelly, for the work that you do and for spending some of your Saturday personal time here with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and everyone else, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of I Am a Black Woman. Yes, I Matter. Love you all. Peace out.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.